The tragic story of Ayrton Senna. Speed. Faith and legacy. Imagine the sound of roaring engines, the smell of burning rubber, the tension of thousands of fans holding their breath as cars fly by at impossible speeds. It is May 1st, 1994, at the San Marino Grand Prix in Imola, Italy. On the starting grid sits Ayrton Senna, a man considered by many to be the purest racing talent Formula One had ever seen. His eyes are focused, his mind is steady, but destiny has written a tragic ending that no one could have predicted. Only 37 laps later, at over 200 kilometers per hour, the unthinkable happens. Ayrton Senna crashes at the infamous Tamburello corner. And the world loses not just a driver, but a hero, an icon, a man whose life and death would change motorsport forever. But Ayrton Senna's story is not defined only by the way he died. It is defined by the way he lived. With speed, faith, and an uncompromising drive to chase perfection. He was a boy from Brazil who turned childhood kart races into legendary victories. He was a competitor who went head-to-head with the best in the world and refused to back down. And he was a human being who carried a deep spirituality, who believed that racing was a way to connect with something greater than himself. His story is one of triumph, rivalry, passion, tragedy, and ultimately, legacy. This is the tragic story of Ayrton Senna. Ayrton Senna da Silva was born in São Paulo, Brazil, in 1960. From the outside, his family lived comfortably compared to many Brazilians, but what truly set Ayrton apart was not wealth or privilege. It was obsession. From as young as 4 years old, he showed an extraordinary fascination with speed. His father built him a small go-kart powered by a lawnmower engine, and it became clear almost immediately that Ayrton had a gift. He wasn't just driving. He was dancing with the kart, controlling it in ways that seemed impossible for a child. Brazil, in the 1970s, was chaotic, filled with political unrest and economic struggles. But young Ayrton had found his escape, his focus, his destiny. By the time he was a teenager, Senna was dominating local karting races. What separated him from the others was his feel for the vehicle, the ability to sense every vibration, every slip of the tires, and adjust instantly. Even then, his mentality was unique. He treated racing not as a game, but as a calling. He once said, on a certain day, in a certain place, you get to the limit, and then you go beyond. And when you go beyond, it takes you into a new dimension. I learned that from God. For Ayrton Senna, driving was not just about beating opponents. It was about touching something spiritual, about exploring the edge of human capability. In the early 1980s, Senna moved to Europe to chase his dream of Formula One. He conquered the junior categories with sheer brilliance, and in 1984, he got his chance. His debut in Formula One came with the Modest Tollman team. No one expected much from the rookie in an uncompetitive car. But then came Monaco, 1984. A race that would announce his arrival to the world. Rain poured onto the narrow streets of Monte Carlo. And while seasoned veterans struggled to keep their cars on track, Senna thrived. Lap after lap, he overtook world champions, carving through the field with precision and fearlessness. He was chasing down Alain Prost, one of the greatest of all time. When the race was controversially stopped due to the conditions, Senna was denied victory. But everyone watching knew it. A star had been born. That day, Ayrton Senna showed that he was different. While others saw danger in the rain, he saw opportunity. He didn't fear the chaos. He embraced it. For him, wet conditions were not a nightmare, but a stage on which he could show his artistry. It was in the rain that he reached levels no one else could touch. And this became a lesson we can all take with us. True greatness shines brightest in chaos. As Senna's career progressed, he moved to more competitive teams, eventually landing at Lotus and then McLaren. It was at McLaren where his fiercest rivalry ignited. The rivalry with Alain Prost. Prost was known as the Professor, a driver of cold calculation, strategy, and intelligence. Senna was his opposite. Fiery, instinctive, aggressive, driven by emotion as much as by logic. Their battles defined Formula One in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The rivalry came to a head at Suzuka in 1989 in a decisive championship moment. The two collided, and Prost walked away with the title under controversial circumstances. A year later, in 1990, Senna took revenge in dramatic fashion. At the very same Suzuka circuit, he crashed into Prost at the first corner, ensuring that the championship would be his. It was controversial. It was aggressive, but it was pure Senna. He was willing to risk everything to win. What made their rivalry so legendary wasn't just the crashes, the politics, or the drama. It was the clash of philosophies. Prost represented control and calculation. Senna represented passion and raw courage. Together, they pushed each other to new limits, and in doing so, they created some of the most unforgettable moments in motorsport history. By the early 1990s, Ayrton Senna was at his peak. He had won 3 world championships, mastered circuits like Monaco, and cemented himself as the fastest driver in qualifying Formula One had ever seen. When Senna was on pole position, which he often was, fans already knew the race would be a battle between human willpower and machine performance. His qualifying laps were not just fast, they were transcendent. He would later describe them as out-of-body experiences. Moments when he felt connected to something divine. Off the track, Senna was deeply spiritual, often speaking about God and destiny. But he was also deeply human. He cared about people, especially in his home country of Brazil. While much of the world knew him as a glamorous superstar, in Brazil, he was a national hero who gave hope to millions. Quietly, without fanfare, he donated millions of dollars to charities and causes that supported underprivileged children. After his death, these efforts continued through the Ayrton Senna Foundation, which has changed countless lives in education and poverty relief. His legacy wasn't just measured in victories or trophies. It was measured in lives touched, hope restored, and inspiration given. And then came 1994. A season that began with promise but quickly descended into tragedy. Senna had moved to Williams, searching for another championship. But the car was difficult to handle, unpredictable, even dangerous. On April 30th, during qualifying at Imola, tragedy had already struck the sport. Roland Ratzenberger, a young Austrian driver, was killed in a horrific crash. Senna, shaken and devastated, considered not racing the next day. He was deeply troubled by what had happened. Yet, as champions often do, he pushed aside his fears and took his place on the grid. May 1st, 1994. The race begins. Senna takes the lead. But on lap 7, disaster strikes. At the Tamburello corner, his car goes straight off the track at over 200 kilometers per hour, smashing into a concrete wall. The world held its breath. Silence fell over the crowd. Moments later, the news began to spread. Ayrton Senna had suffered fatal injuries. At just 34 years old, he was gone. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. In Brazil, 3 days of national mourning were declared. Millions poured into the streets to honor their fallen hero. Around the world, fans, fellow drivers, and even rivals like Alain Prost mourned the loss. Prost, who had once been his fiercest enemy, would later carry Senna's legacy with deep respect, acknowledging that their rivalry had shaped both of their careers. Senna's death was a turning point for Formula One. The sport realized it could no longer ignore safety. The cars, the tracks, the regulations, everything changed. And because of those changes, countless lives were saved in the years that followed. In a tragic way, Senna's final act was to make Formula One safer for those who came after him. But his story, his mentality, his spirit, they live on. Ayrton Senna embodied the idea that racing was more than sport. It was art. It was faith. It was passion at its purest form. He showed the world that greatness isn't just about winning titles, but about how you inspire, how you give, how you live with intensity and purpose. And that is the true tragedy and beauty of Ayrton Senna. He lived fast, he raced fearlessly, and he left us far too soon. But in the short years he had, he gave us moments of magic that will never fade. So what can we learn from Ayrton's? First, that greatness often begins in humble places, but obsession and vision can carry you anywhere. Second, that true character is revealed not when conditions are perfect, but when the storm rages, when chaos takes over, and when others give up. And third, that a legacy is not just built on victories, but on the lives you touch and the impact you leave behind. Ayrton Senna's life reminds us that we should never hold back, never settle, and never fear chasing the edge of our limits. His story is tragic, yes, but it is also one of the most inspiring ever told, because Senna proved that even in death, legends never truly leave us. They live on, in memory, in legacy, and in the hearts of those they inspired. This was the story of Ayrton Senna, a racer, a dreamer, a legend, gone too soon, but never forgotten. If Ayrton Senna's story gave you goosebumps, then you're already part of the Mentality series. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder to chase their dreams no matter the risk. And tell us in the comments, what do you think was Senna's greatest moment on the track? Because here, we don't just talk about legends. We learn from them. We carry their mentality, and we use it to fuel our own lives. So, join us. And together, let's keep the spirit of Ayrton Senna alive.